without further ado, we're going to bring on Josie in just a second. Hang on 1 second. I got to make sure I got your right name on the screen. And there you are. You don't want to be Dina today, do you?
No, I'm okay with Josie.
Awesome. Thanks so much for making it out tonight, man. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, April. My pleasure.
So, as I mentioned before you joined, I let everybody know that you're actually a nurse for Dr. Joyce O'Shaughnessy, who is my oncology nurse. And so, of course, I've known her for 10 years now, and you were there from the beginning. And you were there, I think, almost through when I finished going to her. I think my last appointment with her, I think, was in 2018, maybe 17. So you might have been off a little stint away from Dr. O at that time. But you know, when I think of going to my treatments, I always think about you being there, and you were so important to me. Being able to reach out to you, and an oncology nurse is such an important part in a breast cancer survivor's world when they're going through it. So if you don't mind, Josie, just take everybody on a quick little description of what it is that you do.
Well, April, right now what I'm doing is still I continue to work with Dr. O'Shaughnessy at Texas Oncology Baylor campus. I've been with her for 12 years as a clinical nurse, and sort of a, introduction to new patients, how to navigate through all this. So it's been wonderful working with her. I can't say enough how invested she is in research, and just really light years ahead of keeping above with new medications and findings. And just a little shout out to Breast Cancer Can Stick It. With this funding, you cannot underestimate or be so grateful that it's all in the research. It is all in the research, what we can give today and what's coming around the corner. So separately from that, I've been in oncology for 20 years, various roles, clinical operations. I've started a startup company and education, started their education department, grew with them a little bit. And I do a little in service on new drugs on the side while I'm pursuing my master's in nursing education, so I can teach and be an oncology nurse specialist. So it's my world that always has been, and that's sort of why I got into it. If you don't mind how it all started, was
I do want to talk about that for sure. Yeah.
My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer at 42. And me and my 3 little brothers at the time really didn't know what was happening, but my mom was really strong, and she didn't need chemotherapy. She went on to a clinical trial at the time back in Ontario, and she didn't have to go through radiation and surgery. And that always stuck with me, seeing how like tired she was at times, but when you see your mom and then you kind of look after your little brothers and things like that, I found out at an early age what I was going to do for my career, and that was it.
And how long ago was that now? Like what year was it?
Oh, geez.
That she went through breast cancer.
She was diagnosed 83.
Wow. It was a lot scarier back then. I had a friend who went through breast cancer. So
back then,
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I go back and I was like, well, what were your markers? And she's like, I don't know. So
yeah.
Well, go back in time, because they didn't do that.
No,
and research. And she was at a really big academic institution in Toronto, Ontario, which I'm so grateful for. But that clinical trial and that funding, it ended up that she was on first line treatment and had the best care. And she's 79 and can outrun me in a short race. Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah, all good there. That's how it all happened.
So did you say that she didn't have to have surgery or
He had a
radiation?
lumpectomy.
Okay,
He did not
lumpectomy.
have to have chemotherapy. It was caught
So
early.
crazy. That's so good. I mean, because it's such a scary time back in 1983. Like you said, they didn't have the same treatments. I talked to somebody that said that back then they didn't even have like triple negative breast cancer. Like that wasn't even
No,
known yet. Like they
we didn't
weren't.
even know the
Yeah,
subtypes. In
exactly.
fact,
So
right.
yeah. So like everybody now when they're diagnosed, if you talk to folks, they usually know if they're ER positive, PR positive, HER2 positive, triple negative. They fall to one of those, and then the treatment might differ a little based on which one you have. Like for triple negative, you don't have the hormone therapy, tamoxifen and stuff like that afterwards. And so it's important to know that stuff. So it's crazy. So wow, I'm so glad to
Hmm.
hear that she's doing so very well. So many
Yeah,
years later,
at
almost 40.
42. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so screening is everything. So they were doing that. So she was at that age for mammogram, and of course, self breast examination. Actually, she found it herself. So
Oh,
that's
that's
really
crazy.
important,
Yeah.
to keep and take care of yourself that way. Prevention is
Yeah.
everything.
And,
So,
I always tell people to be familiar with your risk as well. Like the American Cancer Society, I think, does a really good job of listing off the risks to be aware of for breast cancer. So I highly recommend going there. They also, I'm sure, have a place there that instructs you how to do a self exam if you're not familiar with how to do that. Again, like Josie, you said, it's so important. And so many people I've had on the show, too, have found the breast cancer themselves. So, I mean, my gosh, I mean, it is so very important. Um, one of the things that you and I had been talking about over the last couple of days is just that with breast cancer. Oh, let me throw this into the mix real quick, Josie. One of
yeah.
the things I want to make sure that everybody is aware of is we're so excited that you have offered to be a volunteer for Breast Cancer Can Stick It and to help us with navigating patients to resources that they might need, whether it's financial or whatnot. You have such a great amount of information just bottled up right there, and it's such a huge help. And already we've started to take advantage of you and that knowledge that you have to help those that come to us, because we get folks come to us all the time that need financial assistance. And we donate to Parkland for financial assistance for treatment.
Hmm.
But if somebody doesn't fit into, if they're not in Dallas County or they don't fit into the requirements for that assistance there, then you have to go somewhere different. And there are other places, and you're very familiar with that. And so that kind of leads us into the part that people don't talk about very much with breast cancer is the financial stress of going through breast cancer. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and some of the different things that are out there to help folks.
Yeah, I think, when we're in this world initially, it's so shocking. I mean, nobody wants to be in it per se, but when you are, you do want to be surrounded with a great team. And that's what it's all about is the education, sort of plan the trajectory of what this looks like, what your care plan is. And sort of, we talked about this before, and I'm going to plug it out. Always maybe record your first visit with your oncologist and go back to it.
Yes, yes.
It's
That's something
We
we.
write
Yeah.
notes, and when going back to my role with Breast Cancer Can Stick It, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stick to the trajectory. I'm going to remind people of your individual care plan, and continue that sound advice. But part of that package is too, when we sort of get over the, okay, this is my treatment plan, this is what I need to do, continue to reach out to us and your provider, because what we don't think about till later is the out of pocket expense. It is expensive. And you can have insurance and be underinsured. So be very familiar, if you can, or your partner or family, resort to these resources, because a lot of people don't know that they're there. And they're there. Copay assistance, Health Well Foundation, there's the Parkland system, as you know. There's several, and we can't forget about our, Susan G. Komen, and even what the American Cancer Society can do. So I'm always going to go back to, there's resources out there on this financial strain, and a lot of people just don't know to ask.
Yeah,
And
it's
we
very
need to
true.
talk about it.
Yeah.
And again, I'll always, we're here to, direct and remind, but also too, the facility where you're at, they usually have people that you can talk to about. So I think institutions are a lot more cognizant of what they're calling a financial toxicity, because it is. And most of uh, women diagnosed with, they're working and they have children, and time off from work, absenteeism, you just got to keep the funds going. And so they're out there. So I'm always going to say, put your hand up, just ask, just
Yes.
ask,
It's
because
true.
there's out there, and a lot of, yeah,
Yeah.
so they're there.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed whenever folks reach out to breast cancer can stick it is a lot of people aren't aware that a lot of times you can just make a simple payment plan, with the facility you're at. Like they'll work with you to formulate a payment plan so that you're
Hmm.
not just overburdened with this large sum due right away. And I'm surprised that so many people aren't aware that that's an option. But like you said, there's a lot of organizations out there, and it's like all of us organizations, ultimately, working together to help everybody that's going through breast cancer, whether you need a screening, a screening in advance, or if you need financial assistance, you need a ride, whatever it is. There's an organization out there that's looking out for you, and just being able to know who those are and how to find them. So is there like one place that you send everybody to, or is it all kind of dependent on what facility they're going to?
I'm really a big fan of Health Wealth Foundation, and there's a Patient Access Network Foundation, and it's really important. So I will do that, and the Patient Advocate Foundation, and that's strictly for women with breast cancer, and it's a patient assistance program also. So I don't have the list with me. I was going to take a snapshot, but they're my top ones.
Yeah.
And of course, Komen has a lot of resources. Also, it's not just the educational component. So, with me and Dr. O'Shaughnessy down at Baylor, our first meet, and whether people remember it or not, go back to the notes, because part of the discussion and package that we present people are all the available resources.
Yep, and that's
So it's
that's
just a pointing people back to remember that
right.
visit.
Well, and
Go
it's
back to
yeah,
that.
and it's hard because that's the thing is people
Yeah.
you're in an emotional place when that happens. And back to your point about recording, that was one of the things that I did, and it was before you could like record on your phone. So I bought a little MP3 recorder and carried it around to all my appointments. Anytime I was talking to a doctor or nurse, even on the
Yeah.
phone, I recorded everything because it's even harder to remember important details when you're emotionally stressed like that. And
Yeah.
having that to go back to was very, very helpful. We often couldn't remember what the conversation was, how often, like I was doing that in Elasta shot and I had to take a lot of Advil. It was like, how often could I take it? They told me a certain, we'd just go back and replay it. And that was so, so important. And it's easy to miss that when you're
Yeah.
going through trauma, in your brain and this emotional whirlwind. So there are a lot of resources out there. We had a question in here, Josie. Jennifer's asking. She says she's always wondered how the decision is made whether a patient needs to have radiation or not. Is it about the BRCA1/2 genes? I know their decisions are complicated, but is there a basic criteria?
It's size of the tumor, basically, irregardless of the genetic makeup. So it's usually based on size.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
and I was always under the misconception that, like, you either had chemo or you had radiation, but you never had both. But I know of a lot of people who did, like, a bunch of, chemo and then they had to do radiation. I'm like, "Whoa." It's, like, a lot when you think about doing surgery, chemo, radiation, it's a lot to think about all those different things, so it's crazy.
Yeah. Um, Pretty, yeah. So it's size and, where it is. So most people do get radiation, irregardless of your genetic mutations. It's on size. So
So is it generally if it's larger, then you would get radiation?
well, usually it doesn't have to so greater than like I think the size is 2 centimeters. So even though they can surgically remove that, let's say during the lumpectomy, they'll just go in and do radiation to sort of put it into a deep dark hole so it doesn't come back.
Right.
So most people will get radiation based on that if the tumor is a certain size. So it doesn't have to be big, actually. It can be very small. And anything greater than 2 centimeters um, will get radiation.
Gotcha. And I know that, like, at least whenever I was diagnosed, I had surgery first and chemo second. And at that time, anyway, I was told that because my tumor was small, already very small, it made sense to do the surgery first and then the chemo later. And I think that's another thing that people get confused about. A lot of the groups that I'm in on Facebook is whenever someone is told that they're having surgery before chemo and they see so many people who have chemo first, they're like, wait, are they doing the wrong thing? And I even remember when I was told I was having surgery first, I had another friend who was like, no, they have to do chemo first. And I was like, I'm just gonna go with what the doctor says. And I think that's
Yeah.
another thing is so important is to find a doctor that you trust, that you're comfortable with. And in my opinion, for me, I was like, okay, this is the team that I trust. And so what they tell me goes, and that's what I'm going to go with. I'm not going to, second guess anything. And I mean, I'm not saying don't do, second opinions if that's what makes you comfortable, but I'm just saying it's so important to be with a team that you have confidence in, it's like just very important to have that. Um, we
Oh,
talk.
it's
Yeah,
everything. It's everything. You have to have that connection.
yeah,
And I think when you have that connection, you build trust, and it just opens this time in your life to again ask those questions. Be very transparent. So you know, just to reemphasize that it's might be not the greatest thing that's happened to you, but anything in life when something not great happens, you want to have a good plan, and you want to have that surrounded by that team.
yeah,
So good plan, good team. Look ahead.
yeah,
Stick to your plan by
yeah.
your provider. Absolutely.
Yeah, and in addition to recording your visits, I think something that helped me a lot, and actually Jennifer is on right now. She's a breast cancer survivor, and I think she did the same thing. Is we started a binder. Mine was called the breast binder. It was pink, and I had everything in there. Whether it was from my I think I took like a chemo 101 class. I took a look good, feel better class,
Yeah.
and then I had all my all my appointments in there, all the business cards for, my breast surgeon, my oncologist, any doctors that I had to see during my breast cancer journey. Just any notes or any paperwork that was given to me. I printed out stuff off of the American Cancer Society to help me know what questions. I also printed stuff from off of Susan G. Komen's site. They have a place where you can go and download questions for your doctor, so that you can get more information about your breast cancer when you're diagnosed. I think all those kinds of things are super important. What other tips do you have for like a newly diagnosed person?
Let me just add on to your resourcefulness in keeping records. Because you are a 10-year survivor, having those records to have for the rest of your life, so that, you meet or another visit with a doctor, that you can share that information with them, because that's really important too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like for the rest of your life.
yeah,
So, just having that for the future,
right.
not just the then and now. So, tips on first diagnosis? Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying? Like
Yeah.
for yeah. So since we're talking about individual treatment plans with your provider, I think the biggest tip really is, really look at that plan and stay focused with that plan. Oftentimes, I think people might go onto other websites, which is fine. I think you should, learn as much as you can, but it's your story, it's your treatment plan, and it's customized for you. And you had mentioned earlier, oh, I did chemo first and surgery. We're all different in our treatment plan because it is customized for you. So again, try to stay with that focus. Um, really kind of understand the expected side effects so that you're not caught off guard. So always going back to your treatment plan again, um, talking to your nurse and your staff, is important. Don't be afraid to ask the question. And, initially, I think, as you said, we're thinking of a million different things, but, just always come back to your team and ask the questions, make it more specific. And I feel that's more important, that I would want you to build a strong relationship with your provider initially
Yeah,
and their
totally.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have that support. So I would say, just, keep to your treatment plan. Of course, prevention at this point, eat well, sleep well, get your exercise in. Just keep it, in the box. Nothing drastic.
Don't make any drastic decisions, man.
No, no, because you don't know if it's potentially going to be a problem.
Well,
And a lot of people change and say, "Well, I'm going to start taking my vitamins," and it's like, "No, don't
no,
do it
I
yet."
I
You
remember
know?
that. Like I remember like, telling Dr. O, I was like, "Well, I'm doing this Juice Plus thing." And she was like, "No, don't even do that.
Right.
Here's what you can take. If you have the urge to take something else, check with me first." And I'm like, "Totally cool." And I got into the habit, probably to the point of annoyance, of asking questions about everything. Like, "Hey, the skin on my feet is peeling off. My fingernails are changing colors. I have this sore in my mouth. Whatever it was, just always asking questions and constantly learning. And that whole knowledge is power thing is a real deal. But like in a lot of these groups, I see women, or even just on Facebook, when somebody's going through something and they just kind of pose it out to the world. What do I do? And it's like, always go to your provider, man. They are
Yeah.
there for that, and they are the only ones who know your specific situation. I mean, I bet I haven't found anybody in 10 years of talking to breast cancer survivors that has gone through the exact same thing as me. Stage 1, high grade 3, double mastectomy, no reconstruction, 4 rounds AC, 1 round of or 4 rounds of Taxol. Nobody has done the exact same thing, because like you said, and it should give you confidence, it's
Yeah.
customized to you.
For you.
Yeah, I mean, dude,
Exactly.
when you think about like how often do you look at the world and you go, well, everybody, I'm just a number and we all give the same thing and they just cart us through. No, man, with the breast cancer treatment, it's customized to your situation. You may have more chemo than I did, you may have less, you may have different kind. Always go to your provider. I think that's so important, and having that confidence in your team too. I think most oncologists, don't they? Like when I was going through breast cancer, I had an after hours number. God knows I used it like crazy. But, use that number if you're going through breast cancer right now and you are concerned about anything, even if you're just like,
Yeah.
anything.
and that's the takeaway. So that definitely I would concur with you. Say something, put your hand up, um, and call your team. That is probably the best advice.
Yeah.
Don't negate anything. Oh, it's not a big deal. You don't know. So I'd rather you check first. But that strong team trust, it's just imperative.
Yeah,
So
totally is.
I hope
Totally.
everybody is blessed to have that, because that teamwork, that relationship is really going to help.
Yes, big time. Totally big time. I see another question in the group here. Mandy asked, do you suggest that all women get a bracket test? Now, from my understanding, it's like if I know when I was diagnosed, Dr. O wanted me to have one. And then if I had been positive, then she might want, a close relative to also get tested. But I don't think it's like a blanket thing, but what are the conditions at which they normally recommend the genetic testing?
Definitely familiar history, like there's a history of it that it runs in the family. Um, a young age diagnosed, maybe with a odd subtype, like a triple negative, they may suggest that you do that. Um, People who've had their second cancers. So it's really up to the provider in taking the history, where you could get a full genetic panel. So it's not random. It's well thought out, and it's based on age, type, family history, maybe certain descent, are more susceptible to cancer, so it may be done there. But it goes back to the family. Yeah, even, like a father had maybe this prostate cancer, their father had that prostate cancer. So, if there's a strong family trait, it more than likely would be recommended that you be tested. But that is a question to ask at your visit if your provider has not encouraged you to do it.
And it just so happens that I know this person who's asking the question, and her mother passed away from breast cancer. If she had a strong familial trait of breast cancer on her mom's side, is that something a scenario where she should get tested?
She should bring it up. It would be really good to know if her mom was tested, if she carried a mutation, if she could find that out, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but yes, it's something she can bring up to her primary care physician.
right. And
So
now what's cool is it's like when I first got diagnosed, they were only testing for like a couple, maybe four different genes that link back to breast cancer. But now it's like, what is it, like 27? It's like a lot now, isn't it? A lot of different genes,
but
not just the BRCA gene.
exactly. But two, we need to be careful, because even though we find all these genetic mutations, we're really not at a place where there's treatment for them. So a lot we know what to do. It's important information. I think it'll be important information down the road when we have this information. So um, it's amazing. I mean, we are finding things, and even in the triple negative, we're finding a subtype. I don't know if you've heard of it, but PDL1. We have a drug for that where we didn't have before.
Oh wow.
So
How
yeah,
how recent have they started testing for that gene? I think it's been 2 or 3 years since
it's
I
been
was
a
tested.
while.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been a while, but to have a drug now for it, um, it's all about the research and the genetic testing and
yeah.
things like that. So I don't know who your friend is, but definitely, and I don't know how old she is either, but I would bring that up, because number one, it's really not that expensive either. It used to
Really?
be that it was expensive. Yeah.
In
So
my
most
brain, it's
insurance are
expensive.
recovering.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Now, don't quote me, but it's like maybe $250.
Nice.
So it's a lot
Yeah.
cheaper than. used to be.
Yeah, like
So
in my head, I'm like, it's $5,000 and you have to beg your insurance company to pay for it. I have no
yeah,
idea.
no, we've come a long way there.
Yeah.
So yeah, just have her ask her provider, and it sounds like that would be something she could do.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
does she live in Dallas?
Actually, she just responded and said, my paternal grandmother was a survivor. I did ask my doctor at my last visit, and I told him I wanted to get one, so I'm actually setting up an appointment for it. That's really great.
Yeah,
And see, I think
you know.
the reason you want to have this information, to your point, Josie, you were saying there's not like some kind of way you can cure that gene, but it's to be aware, to know your risk, and to possibly maybe do more screening or more frequent screenings, just to really keep an eye out so that it's caught really early if you do have it. That's in my mind what I think is knowing your risk. That gives your doctor the tools to know how often you might need to be screened. Like for me with fibrocystic breasts, I did ultrasounds every 6 months, and that's how it was caught so early. And so maybe with one of the genes, if it's a strong chance of breast cancer, then there might be more additional screening you could be doing. Is that
Oh,
accurate?
absolutely. The Angelina Jolie. I mean, that's a perfect case scenario right there. She had the mutation, then she prophylactically, had the mastectomy, and her ovaries removed. So yes, it's very important. So again, the takeaway here is, we really need to be advocates for ourselves and knowing this information, and asking,
Yeah,
hey, is this
totally.
pertinent to me? So yeah,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
anything, really.
exactly.
I
Being
just kind of want to go
proactive.
back yeah, with the radiation. When I said 2 centimeters, I was thinking about that. That's a little on the big side. So it's less than that.
For the
Like I
radiation,
said,
gotcha.
don't quote me. Right,
That's
right, right.
okay. That's okay. No
Yeah, because I'm
problems.
thinking, anyway, yeah. So the point was that it's based on size.
Yeah, yeah. We also have another survivor in the house. Paige is here. She says, my doctor suggested I meet with a geneticist. Honestly, the idea of seeing another new doctor feels exhausting before even making an appointment. And I kind of don't want to know if there are other huge hurdles in my future.
Yeah. Sounds like it's a strong recommendation. It doesn't sound like, I'd be interested. Was this based on genetic profiling? So is this part of the genetic testing and going over it when she says geneticist?
Yeah, I don't know. This is again another. I know a lot of breast cancer survivors, obviously, and this one I've happened to know a lot of my life as well with the church, with Dina and I, who was our guest earlier. And I don't recall her having genetic testing done, so maybe that's their route for getting the genetic testing. I'm not sure, but
Yeah. I would ask her oncologist again as to why, but I would think that's something maybe she should do at one point, maybe not so much now, but go back and ask that question as to why. But certainly I would think, maybe it was just genetic testing,
yeah,
you
possibly.
know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
mhm, yeah,
so maybe that's just what it is, and
yeah.
just call the genetic testing facility wherever that is,
Right.
which you may want to do.
Yeah. And Jennifer says, when I was diagnosed in 2015, my doctor had me tested for, I think, 27 cancer genes. If I recall correctly, this was, again, 5 years ago, that she recalled it was around $1,000. So I think that the price, based on what you said not quote you, but it does sound like it's more than likely gone down. And that's huge,
Oh
man.
yeah.
That's really awesome. And to
Yeah.
know that insurance is covering it more often now than not, so that's really great as well. We also have Grace in the house. She's a metaplastic TNBC survivor, and she says, "Why do we not have more study about that?" And Josie, forgive me if I'm asking you too many like Dr. O-ish questions, but I like to try to answer folks' questions if you know anything about that. Do you have any information about why metaplastic TNBC isn't studied more?
I really don't. I it would, I mean, she could go on to clinicaltrials.gov. It might be funding or, on the list of things that we're targeting, maybe we're going for, the different subtypes initially. So um, I don't know who is and who isn't and what the numbers are. So I would have to go onto clinicaltrials.gov. But Grace, this is what I will do for you when I go back to work this week. I will ask the good doctor.
There you go.
And I'm sure she'll give me, and,
direct line,
like I
Grace.
said, right. So again, if I do not know the answer, I will try and find it out for you. But
Yeah.
I really don't know, Grace. So I'd have to look into that for you for sure.
And Grace, I think you're part of the Survivors Rock, a breast cancer can stick it community. So maybe Josie, we can post something in that group when you have an answer to that, and we'll be sure that Grace finds out. So Grace, I think you're part of that group. If you're not, for some reason, it's Survivors Rock, a breast cancer can stick it community here on Facebook. It's just a group for survivors, breast cancer survivors. So if you are a breast cancer survivor or have a friend that's a breast cancer survivor, be sure and let them know about that group. Survivors Rock, a breast cancer can stick it community. And I want to give a shout out to John, who's in the house. John, thank you for being here. Paige says, I am BRCA2, and it was recommended by gastroenterologist to go and talk to a geneticist. So that
Good.
makes sense, yeah.
I would put that on your to-do list at some point.
Yeah, totally. And Paige, girl, you know
that you carry that mutation. That makes sense. So,
yeah,
yes, based on your age and again surveillance and what are our steps for
right.
Paige. So,
Yep,
when you can, I would do that.
totally. And Paige, we got your back, girl. We're in that. She's in that group too, so we have your back at Breast Cancer Could Stick It and in the survivor group. So, whatever, we can do to help, whatever. I love you, girl. Please take care of yourself. I love you, man. All right. Grace says thank you. So we'll give her a shout out about that once we have that answer on our Survivors Rock or Breast Cancer Could Stick It community page. Again, guys, donate just $10 a day. Go to breastcancercouldstickit.org/10 for 10. breastcancercouldstickit.org/10 for 10. Just donate $10 and help me celebrate 10 years cancer-free. Josie, I want to thank you so much for joining today, girl, and I am so happy that we got a chance to introduce you to everyone, and I can't wait to see what we can do together to help fight breast cancer.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just so happy for you, April, and really happy to be a part of this group and what we're doing for the community. So
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, girl.
My friend.
All
okay,
right.
God bless. Take care.
God bless you too. You take care too. All right, guys, That was Josie. We love her, man. She is awesome. So grateful to have had her on the show tonight.